I find myself in the current situation as Christina, receiving a demanding phone call for money. The unidentified man on the other end insists I bring $5,500 to the park immediately. His persistent repetition of the demand reflects his lack of rationale and shame. Startled by his sudden shout, I hesitantly respond, acknowledging my understanding. Curiosity prompts me to question the man's identity, to which he falls silent, seemingly realizing the potential consequences of revealing himself. Despite his reluctance, he resumes his aggressive demands, dismissively stating, "Who cares who I am? Just bring the money quickly." Recognizing the futility of further conversation, I take a guess, suggesting he might be Victor. The man stumbles over his words, confirming my suspicion. Astonished that my brother-in-law, Victor, would think I wouldn't recognize his voice when calling from his own phone, I wonder why he is demanding money from me. As I ponder this, Victor admits his true intention. Both he and my husband, Edward, work at the same metalworking factory, with ambitions to inherit it. According to Victor, Edward is involved in fraudulent activities, embezzling $5,500 from the company. Shocked, I find it hard to believe Edward would engage in such behavior. Considering Edward's lack of interest in materialistic pursuits and his seemingly content lifestyle, I question the motive behind the embezzlement. Victor's explanation raises doubts, especially considering his own track record as a careless and unreliable individual who is fond of gambling. Despite potential inaccuracies, Edward's version of events appears more credible than Victor's own account. I've heard rumors that Victor has leaned on Edward for loans on multiple occasions, and while he's always managed to repay them, there's a lingering doubt about his financial stability. It's plausible to consider that Victor's current predicament might be pushing him to desperate measures. Unable to seek assistance from Edward or others due to the pressure of repayment, he likely saw me as an easy target to extort money from. As I contemplated this unsettling possibility, Victor interrupted my thoughts, prompting me to acknowledge his presence. Despite my shock, Victor continued his coercive tone, urging me to handle the situation discreetly and procure the money secretly. Recognizing the potential gravity of the situation, I felt adamant about not succumbing to his demands without proof. In a bid to test Victor's claims, I inquired about evidence implicating Edward in the alleged embezzlement. I anticipated Victor's unpreparedness for such a question, yet to my surprise, he asserted having evidence but refused to reveal it immediately. Sensing his reluctance, I proposed a rendezvous the following day at the company office for a proper review of the evidence. Although Victor insisted on a swift resolution, I remained skeptical, suspecting his intent to fabricate evidence. With Edward unreachable in France due to work commitments, I found myself isolated in dealing with the situation. It dawned on me that Victor's timing was strategic, adding another layer of frustration to an already complex scenario. Resigned to the reality of handling the matter independently, I resolved to confront Victor the next day, determined to unearth the truth behind his accusations and safeguard against potential manipulation. Following Victor's instructions, I made my way to the factory office. Outside, I took a moment to gather myself, inhaling deeply before discreetly activating the record function on my mobile phone. Inside the office, I found Victor surrounded by clerks. "Hello, Victor," I greeted him, and he ushered me into the reception room. Opening a laptop, Victor presented several invoices and purchase orders, asking if I understood them. Confirming my past experience as a clerk, he directed my attention to a document labeled as an invoice, with a total amount, including tax, of $5,500. Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but speak up, realizing the apparent deception. Victor, attempting to justify the situation, claimed that Edwards had processed the transaction independently without involving the clerks. Despite his excuses, the fabricated nature of the invoice was evident, lacking the usual format. Choosing not to confront him directly, I decided to let Victor further incriminate himself, touching the pen in my chest pocket discreetly. I questioned Victor about Edward's involvement. His confirmation prompted him to suggest that I pay the $5,500 quietly for the benefit of both myself and Edwards. As Victor pressed for payment, I sought an opportunity to secure evidence. Pretending to stagger, I dramatically knocked the laptop's keyboard, pressing a specific key twice. In the chaos, Victor panicked, fearing the deletion of evidence. Seizing the moment, I suggested it was accidental, allowing him to reassure me about a backup. With the document file closed and the laptop shut, Victor approached, emphasizing the need for payment now that I had seen the evidence. Seizing on an upcoming family gathering at Dad's house over the weekend, Victor hinted at discussions about company succession, urging me to pay up for my own good. Keeping my intentions veiled, I mentioned a meeting at my father-in-law Borden's house regarding the company's future, substituting for Edwards, who was currently in France. Victor advised bringing the money to the family gathering, leaving me to contemplate my next move as he laughed with an unsettling tone. Exiting the reception room, I left the office behind. I was taken aback to find Victor's wife, Violet, waiting for me unexpectedly. "Hello, Christina," she greeted me coolly. Her demeanor suggested she was aware of Victor's threats, which instantly put me on edge. While Victor might not be the sharpest, Violet was a different story altogether. She possessed a sharp intellect, albeit one used for dubious purposes, often employing sly and deceitful tactics to get her way. Attempting to maintain composure, I acknowledged that I had heard Victor's side of the story. Violet wasted no time in scrutinizing me, and I braced myself for what was to come. "Thank you for the advice, but I have no intention of complying," I asserted, hoping to make a swift exit. However, before I could leave, Violet seized my arm and deftly retrieved my mobile phone from my pocket. With a sinking feeling, I watched as she accessed the recorded conversation between Victor and me. Her accusation hung heavy in the air, leaving me unable to respond. As she deleted the incriminating evidence, I realized the gravity of the situation. But Violet wasn't finished yet. She proceeded to play a personal conversation between me and my mother, twisting its innocent context into something sinister. Her whispered insinuations struck fear in me, and I found myself speechless and powerless in her presence. As she returned my phone to my pocket, her veiled threats lingered, leaving me with no choice but to comply with her demands. With the recording erased and her leverage secured, Violet slipped away into the office, leaving me to grapple with the unsettling reality of her manipulation. It became clear that she might have been the mastermind behind Victor's actions all along, urging him on from behind the scenes. As I composed myself, I realized the need for caution in navigating this treacherous situation. Without hesitation, I sent Victor a terse message. "I'll pay the money." It was a concession made under duress, a temporary solution to a much larger problem. I had no intention of giving in to Violet's demands, but sending that one misleading message was crucial. It would make her feel secure, preventing her from tampering with the recording of our conversation. Without her manipulation, it would be challenging to hold her accountable for her deceitful actions. She was cunning, no doubt, but I was determined to outsmart Victor, whose weaknesses lay in his gambling habits. As the weekend approached, I found myself reinvigorated, ready for what lay ahead. Upon arriving at my in-laws' house, I noticed Victor and his wife had just arrived as well. Victor wasted no time in approaching me about the money, but I suggested discussing it elsewhere, considering the presence of relatives. Thankfully, Violet's interruption provided me with the opportunity to escape momentarily, seeking refuge with my mother-in-law. Engaging myself in various tasks assigned by her, I observed the gathering unfold. When Borden, my father-in-law, took center stage to discuss the future management of the company, Victor's eagerness betrayed his lack of composure. His enthusiasm was quickly dampened by Borden's calm demeanor, revealing Victor's inadequacies to the amused audience. As the meeting progressed, I was asked to display a video showcasing the company's performance. Recognizing this as my moment, I prepared to unveil my plan. Connecting the laptop to the TV, I discreetly inserted a memory card containing incriminating audio recordings. With Borden's approval, I projected the video on the TV while playing the audio simultaneously. Victor's threatening voice echoed through the room, causing him to panic. Despite his attempts to halt the playback, Borden insisted on hearing it in full. As the recording continued, Violet's expressions shifted from confusion to realization. The audio she believed she had erased resurfaced, exposing her involvement in our altercation. With a smirk, I watched as the truth unfolded, knowing that Violet's deception had been laid bare for all to see. I wasn't taking any chances when meeting Victor. I took thorough precautions. While recording audio on my mobile phone is standard, I also brought along a pen-shaped IC recorder as a backup. That additional measure proved critical. Victor's confusion was palpable when confronted with the incriminating evidence. He faltered, unable to conjure up a plausible excuse, revealing his lack of cunning. In contrast, Violet swiftly attempted to deflect blame onto me, claiming it was a trap I had set. Borden's scrutiny fell upon me, prompting me to recount the truth. Victor and Violet had indeed threatened me over Edward's owed funds. However, Victor's insistence on the absence of evidence posed a significant hurdle. Even with the audio recordings I presented, their dismissal left me at a loss. As Victor and Violet vehemently denied the accusations, I seized upon an opportunity, requesting to examine Victor's laptop. I hoped to uncover the incriminating document file. Despite Victor's protests, Borden handed over the laptop. Yet to my dismay, the file was nowhere to be found. Disappointment clouded Borden's expression as he faced the dilemma of conflicting testimonies. Victor and Violet wore smug smiles, convinced of their victory. With no evidence to support my claims, the situation seemed dire. However, I wasn't ready to concede defeat just yet. With a last-ditch effort, I urged Borden to check the screenshot folder, explaining its function to capture screen images. The tension in the room escalated as all eyes turned to Violet, awaiting the outcome. I noticed a subtle change in her expression. It seemed she grasped the implication. A simple button press could capture a screenshot of the computer screen. I found it. This is it, labeled as an invoice, I declared. Borden's stern gaze fell upon Victor, who, in turn, shot a panicked look at Violet. Confused, Violet slumped in apparent defeat. When Victor presented the fake invoice, he failed to notice my discreet action of pushing my hand against the keyboard. In that moment, I had taken a screenshot without naming the file. Although Victor remained oblivious, the slight screen flicker during the process had potentially gone unnoticed. Violet, thinking that deleting the document file erased all evidence, had underestimated the swiftness of a screenshot. My strategic message indicating intent to pay had played a role in lowering their guard. However, I acknowledged that this method might not always be foolproof. Borden, convinced by my proof, reprimanded Victor and Violet on the spot. Victor, cornered, confessed to the dire situation stemming from his gambling debts, breaking down into tears. Violet, too, admitted to orchestrating the scheme to coerce money from me. Confronted by the gathered relatives, Victor and Violet had to issue a profound apology. Legally, this situation could be considered extortion, but as a family matter, I hesitated to escalate it further. Regardless, Borden decided that having individuals like Victor within the company was detrimental. Consequently, he terminated Victor's employment and disowned him, foregoing any severance pay. The burdened couple left town, grappling with their debts, but interestingly, they did not divorce. It appeared that Violet couldn't bear to abandon a sobbing Victor. Later, a business associate informed Edwards about Victor and Violet's struggles. Despite taking odd jobs, they couldn't escape their debtors. In desperation, they sought refuge in a factory they had dealt with, begging the owner to take on their debt in exchange for working on the premises. Presently, they continue as living workers in that factory. With Victor gone, Edwards was determined to be the successor to the factory. Reflecting on the situation, I realized the need to be more supportive of Edwards despite everything. In the end, I couldn't help but acknowledge Violet's compassion. as abandoning someone so hopeless was beyond my comprehension. Yet, I remained firm in my belief that Edwards, with his intelligence and character, was incomparably better than Victor.